Howdy guys and gals! Today we have a lot of work to do. First off, we will build a cactus farm. And of course, we will add it into our super cool, super ancient and super right below our base sitting stronghold. Cactus can be smelted to create green dye and is used in some redstone contraptions for its destructive abilities. After clearing some space next to home base fountain for this, we place in a collection system. 3 double chests should probably be enough to collect cactus in. While we're at it, we also install 3 more double chests for an overflow system that turns excess cactus into bone meal and then into bone blocks. This way nothing goes to waste. Let's clear some room above the chests. You can already see the soul sand block I placed on the ground. Here we will send the items up in a bubble elevator and over the hoppers for the cactus chests. Once the initial 3 chests and their respective hoppers are full of cactus, the water stream will carry all excess into a composter. The bone meal produced by the composter will go into a crafter that we will wire with redstone to craft bone blocks out of it. The setup I did here with 2 observers facing each other is not a good idea, so please ignore that. This way the crafter is powered every 2 ticks, which would probably result in 0 bone blocks and 3 chests full of white dye. I built a better system later on that only sends a redstone pulse once the crafter is completely full and ready to craft a bone block. I have something on my mind regarding composters. I did some research when at some point I needed large quantities of bone meal. And everywhere you look on YouTube, people recommend cake or pumpkin pie as the most effective item to fill up a composter. And technically, this is correct, because these 2 items are the only ones that have a 100% chance to raise a composter's fill level by 1. But it is by far not the most efficient way to fill it up. Nobody's talking about cookies. Besides being delicious, cookies have an 85% chance to raise the fill level. But you can get a whopping 18 of them from a farmer villager for 3 emeralds. Only 1 if you cured him. They only sell you 4 pumpkin pies or 1 cake for 1 emerald. So if you have a trading hall and no big bone meal farm lying around, you may want to try this out. Back to the cactus production. Let's analyze the quirky behavior of this block. It only grows on sand, it can't have a block placed side by side to it, and if it grows and there's a block adjacent to the newly grown cactus block, it plops out of existence and drops as an item. Most of the time this item lands on the very cactus block it grew from and gets destroyed. But if it actually survives, we want to collect it in a large water stream and transport it to the bubble elevator. I placed fences next to the top blocks of the cactus and later changed them out for trapdoors. We want to have the smallest possible type of blocks here, so the dropped items won't bounce off of it and land on the cactus instead of the water. To design the rest of the transport system, I needed ice. So I went and threw my old car batteries into the ocean before hacking down an iceberg. Take that, climate change! Ice has the wonderful property of being slippery, so items will slide over it. Also, the packed and blue ice of icebergs doesn't melt when exposed to heat, because, science, I guess. I am 100% certain that there's a much more efficient way to make all the cactus flow where it needs to be. But I can proudly announce to you that I came up with this solution all by myself and that it works very reliable. I tried around and multiple times I thought that it would have been easier if I had placed the collection system at the very corner of the farm. So I could have just made a single water stream pointing right into it. So the lesson learned here probably is, whatever you lack in planning, you have to make up in dedication afterwards. After reassuring that the farm will work as intended, I built a little maintenance access to the back of the farm, just in case I want to rework something in the future. In between projects, I decided to go clean up some of the general things around the base. For example, the tunnel I excavated to reach the skeleton spawner. This should look and feel like a part of the stronghold. Transforming and extending generated structures in Minecraft is somehow really satisfying to me. You can give the place a real purpose, and at the same time, the Stronghold's block palette and the building style sets a vague guideline on how the things we add here will look. I can already imagine this underground complex grow and feel like a maze full of cool stuff. There's so much more to come. But besides looks, there's also a very important factor we need to address: efficiency. Okay, I'll say it out loud so you don't have to. That's very German of you, Jay. Maybe I fit the cliché a little bit too good, but this stairwell was too inefficient for me to leave it in place. This is about my peace of mind, okay? The new one leads from the smelter straight to the lava corridor. Very cool, very efficient, saves time and makes me very happy. Am I weird for celebrating a cobblestone stairwell that much? Nah. Also, this hallway is the main entrance part of our reoccupied stronghold, so it deserves to look as good as possible. I went on with the ceiling of the lava corridor and made some minor corrections to it. I try to preserve a good portion of the original design where it makes sense. Same thing when I redesigned our glorious fountains. I am not even slightly done with the decorating part, but it is a start. If we add a little bit here and there in between, we will eventually get there. For now, some mossy stairs will do it. After some more decorative experiments using a bunch of walls on the walls as, well, walls with a little depth, there were also slight improvements to the safety of the facility and its only worker before we moved our focus to upgrading the base on the surface. Have you ever tried maintaining a decent room temperature when there's a 13 meters wide and 7 meters tall hole in your outer wall? I grabbed a bunch of glass panes and dyed them to make a very simple stained glass window. And the result? It's not that bad, okay? Guess we need to do some pixel art soon. One of the first farms we built in this series was the cooked chicken machine. We even went to the Nether rather spontaneous to gather the required quartz. Since then, we are feasting on the fruits of our labor. But already during the construction I said that this instrument of industrialized poultry eradication would probably not make a good decoration in a living space. At least not in this living space. I have no idea how your living space looks, so maybe this would be an upgrade. But I am getting distracted. As promised before, I went and dressed this machine up as some kind of kitchen unit. The crafter makes for great kitchen shelves and even has sort of a grill on top of it. I somehow managed to break the redstone mechanism while decorating, so if you see eggs piling up in the water throughout the video, don't worry. I have fixed this by simply removing some redstone dust and putting it back where it was again. I'll be honest, no idea what happened there. I tried to include some useful details in the build too. Some storage space and later on an anvil and a crafting table. Oh, and did you know? Wooden stairs can even catch fire if they are placed diagonally to a lava block and there's non-flammable blocks on the sides. We live and we learn. During the editing of this video, the creaking update came out and Mojang changed the way dispensers work. Now the machine will always hit the chickens sitting there waiting to grow up. The chicken will jump and get killed by the lava, and baby animals do not drop items, probably to not encourage players to slaughter innocent newborns. I mean, have some decency, man. Let them grow up cramped together in a 1 cubic meter murder cell before you burn their heads with lava like normal people. Where was I? Yes. Baby not drop food, so baby jump when hit by egg, bad. That means we have to come up with a clever solution for this. Speaking of clever solutions, do you still produce mud like this? Aren't you tired of the time-consuming labor of filling and emptying a water bottle over and over? Then wash off the muddy stains of inefficiency and plunder your redstone chest, so you can upgrade your workflow with the Ilmango Mud Converter. Wow! Contraptions like this are the reason why I consider designing farms in Minecraft a form of art. This machine is so optimized and shrunk to the bare minimum that you can fit it nearly anywhere. I tucked it under the stairwell that leads up to the tower where we will turn the mud straight into clay. If you are interested in building this farm, make sure to watch Ilmango's tutorial. I made some mistakes while building this. For example, I put the hopper pointing into the wrong dispenser. So if you want to get a step-by-step guide, I recommend you the original tutorial. But of course I will try to describe to you what this contraption does as good as I can. We have two dispensers and a hopper between them. The lower dispenser and the hopper are filled with empty bottles. The upper dispenser will soon be filled with water bottles. In front of the lower dispenser there is a dropper. This one supplies us with fresh dirt while we are farming. If we now place a dirt block in front of the dispenser, we allow a redstone signal to flow through and activate both dispensers and the dropper. So dispenser 1 applies a water bottle to the placed dirt and turns it into mud. Dispenser 2 applies an empty bottle to the water in front of it, producing a water bottle. The system cycles empty and filled bottles between the dispensers, while the dropper spits a new block of dirt into our face every time we place one. Because of server lag, some water bottles spill out here. I will solve this by simply using iron shovels in the future. Once more, I encourage you to take a close look on the numerous farms Ilmango among other YouTubers designed, because his tutorials are very helpful and easy to follow. Thank you for that, mate! Like for the hopper clock in the last video, I set up an armor stand for the farm's creator and went to get a sign. The mud farm is done and we can now go on and upgrade the next step of the dirt to terracotta pipeline, because I love to build with terracotta. To make terracotta we need clay, and we get clay by draining mud via pointed dripstone. I repurposed the prison cells in the stronghold to become an automatic pointed dripstone farm, which is basically an upside down sugarcane or bamboo farm. Then I realized that stalactites grow really slow even when there's blocks of dripstone above it, which speeds the growth. So I went down into Mount Crushmore and collected a bunch of dripstone. I collected both pointed dripstone and blocks of dripstone, because I thought it would drain the mud faster, like it speeds up the stalactite growth. Turns out this isn't true, and the block type between the stalactite and the mud doesn't matter at all. But I could use the dripstone blocks to grow more pointed dripstone until I had enough to fill the entire tower at the base. I replaced the water from the dripstone production with mud, and we had a working clay production tower. I produced a couple of stacks of mud with our new farm and drained them on the 3 platforms inside the tower. This works really well. I will replace the floors with better looking blocks in the future, now that I know that it doesn't have to be dripstone blocks. All of this clay can now be smelted down into terracotta in the oven once we turned it into blocks. And obviously we need to put a roof on the tower, but the functionality is very much given. After encountering some zombies and an enderman on the platforms, I decided this place could do with a little more lighting. When I went down the tower to go down the staircase to put the clay blocks into the smelter, I felt it again. The disgusting feeling of inefficiency. And I needed to act immediately. So I measured where the smelter sits compared to the base above ground. Luckily it is in very close proximity to the storage area, so I decided to put a smelting goods chest here. From the chest I did a tactical drilling operation down to the stronghold. My plan was to create some sort of drop chute, where we can dump off everything we want to put in the ovens, and in addition to that develop a system to set off the smelter minecarts from ground level. But the easy part first. I gathered some passive farmed iron and some passive farmed bamboo and crafted up some hoppers. I jumped down the chute and totally nailed a water bucket clutch. I didn't even have the bucket in my hand. Anyways, I connected the smelting goods minecart to the smelting goods chest. If you want to save on iron while going straight up with a hopper line, you can also replace every second hopper with either a barrel, a chest, or even better, with a decorated pot. But we have plenty of iron and wood, so it doesn't matter much. The more tricky part for me was to send a signal from above down to the rails powering the minecarts. I tried around in a creative world, but only found out that it is comically easy to send a signal upwards, but sending it downwards was impossible for me. Later I remembered that there is a way with wall blocks and observers, but at the time I couldn't come up with anything for the life of me, and so I went to bed. Again the idea struck me on the verge of falling asleep. I could simply dig a second chute and drop an item down onto a pressure plate. The item would activate it for about 5 minutes until it eventually despawns. This way the smelter even turns itself off. To get the item to the right place, I would transport it in a water stream. After installing the pressure plate, digging the channel for the water stream and getting a sign and redstone, I stuffed a whole cooked chicken in my mouth and nailed the 3rd bucket clutch in a row. I set up the water and side combo, armed the redstone part and tested it, noticing that items can fall off the sides of a pressure plate when it's on a wall block. I placed a solid block beneath it and walled it off with half slabs, so I could still see if an item is activating the smelter. Then I returned to the surface to conduct the final test. Are you ready for it? Let's just pretend that the item didn't land on the block because the chute is closed, okay? The item drops straight into the chute and into the water stream. It floats over, drops down onto the pressure plate, and the minecarts start distributing the load. Very cool. Time will tell if 5 minutes of smelting is a lot or not, especially if we are loading the minecarts via hoppers. We'll see. For the final part I got 9 stacks of items we wouldn't miss. I settled on red dye from the countless poppies our iron farm has accumulated over the time. I took them to an anvil and named all 9 stacks 5 more minutes, because I was feeling silly. We can now smelt a lot of stuff before we need to restock the dropper again. I hid the maintenance axis under the floorboards and slapped some explanatory signs on the wall, just in case I forget how to use a chest and a button. Now that we have this inefficiency purged, let's move on to our last project for today, shall we? I noticed several slimes spawning in one of the corridors earlier and dug out the whole chunk I saw them in. Slimes can spawn either in swamps at a certain light level and depending on the moon phase, or in so-called slime chunks, which make up about 10% of all chunks. Here they spawn below a certain Y coordinate at any light level. I wasn't sure which exact chunk was the slime chunk, so I dug out a little more than necessary just to check. The slime farm I had in mind consists of 3 components: a bait to lure the slimes to the middle, a killing mechanism, and lastly, a collection system for the dropped slime balls. For the killing part, we make a square of magma blocks around the bait area for the slimes to hop onto. The collection system consists of some hoppers leading into an array of chests. Notice that you also need to spawn-proof the rest of the chunk, and at best also the surrounding caves, for the farm to work efficiently. Luckily, most of the caves around are flooded, and for the corridors I have used buttons on the floor to break the 2x2 spawning patterns of slimes. Now comes the bait part. Of course, the wobbly green slime blobs are jealous of the ripped body and steel 6-pack of an iron golem. That's why they are perfect bait for this setup. I create this little pagoda and showed off my superior knowledge about iron golem spawning and handling. When I finally had this guy standing in the bait zone, I decided to spawn the second one right outside and use a leash once more. The golems are also useful because they can attack the bigger slimes once I remove the trapdoors on top so they can see them properly. Once they have broken them up into smaller slimes, the magma blocks can take full effect on them. Before this farm is finished, we need to make sure that we also collect the slime balls that are dropped onto the magma. To collect items through a solid block, we install some kind of merry-go-round minecart track and send a hopper minecart running in circles. This also passes one of the hoppers leading into the chests, so we can also collect the spillage and see how well our farm works. Here is the time-lapse of the farm while I was AFKing way up on the clay tower. Looks pretty busy to me. So, this looks very, very pleasing. Great yield. This farm seems to work very well. And before we have to say goodbye once more, because we have reached the end of this episode, I want to show you something. You see that? This is the creaking cape. I got this for playing stupid parkour games on Minecraft Bedrock. No, I have to be honest. It was really fun. It was really fun. Me and my wife played it over the course of one weekend, and it was really fun. It was cool. The eerie Mojang office party. But this is all I have for you today. I thank you very much for watching this episode, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. Bye guys and gals!